Okay, welcome back to all of our listeners. This is part 2 of just a really deep dive, fascinating conversation with our friend and client, Max Kayes. Max, thank you so much for continuing the conversation with us.
Join us.
We'll keep going. I just want to give a brief introduction again for those who maybe missed out on part 1. Max is a licensed marriage, family, and child therapist. He has been up to this work for 41 years of counseling and coaching. He is also a life coach. He is the president of New Hope Christian Counseling Foundation. He's made significant inroads in the fields of mental health and personal development, and most recently gained his NLP Master Practitioner from the Tony Robbins and Chloe Madanis training program. So he is a wealth of information and experience. Max, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it. So where we left off on the last episode, you talked about 6 basic needs that everyone shares. And I'm just going to give a brief overview. And for those who are interested in really diving in, I invite them to go back. It's certainty, variety, significance, love, growth, and contribution. And you really shared with us the framework that these 6 basic needs are in all of our lives. And as we look at those needs through the lens of our own finances, both personally and for those who are trying to run their financial life with their significant other, right? And for the benefit of their household, right? We find misalignment sometimes in our values or a misassessment of what our needs actually are. And this is where the joy of our work, Jeremiah and I, and together with my dad, Randy, the financial planning side of being able to step into that conversation, work with clients to develop a plan that ultimately is a one-size-fits-one. Because while we all share these same 6 basic needs, the way that we interpret them, our values as we relate to them, the recipe, you use that illustration, is different for everyone. And so just kind of that need to build a structure and a plan and a framework for the future from a financial perspective. So we left off talking about this idea of those 6 basic needs as they relate to entrepreneurs and business owners. And I kind of ended with this question of, I'm sure in your experience, Max, both personally and in the work that you do, you have found couples where one has a need for risk-seeking, entrepreneurship, business growth, and maybe the other spouse or partner doesn't have that same need, and that can create friction and stress.
Yes.
And how do we as planners, and you in your role, how do you kind of work through that misalignment?
Well, I think we're going to go maybe in a different direction than, there's the practical part, and that is, how do we do this? What are the rules of engagement, right? But I'll talk about something that's not very perhaps psychological, and that is, it's called love. So when people come in, and typically they bring a situation like this to me, like they want me to be some kind of like judge, it's like I'm not Judge Judy, right?
You are right,
role.
you are
That's
wrong,
right.
here's your punishment.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not my role. But what I realize is sometimes people are too attached to their idea, right? Or what they believe. And so when you're too attached to, being right, sometimes you're wrong because it doesn't serve the us. It doesn't serve the couple. So I think, we talk about needs, but I think we also have to know, Tony Robbins also talked about, he had this thing back in the day, he called it OPA. And what that stands for is outcome, purpose, action. And the idea is, for instance, if we take an action and we try really hard, like we want to work out, right? And so, we start working out, going to the gym. And if all we're doing is taking the action because we know we're supposed to do it, after a while, willpower wanes. right? We can do it for a while, but we tap out. That's why gyms make so much money by February, because everybody has this great idea and they make resolutions. They don't make revolutions. New Year's
I
revolutions,
like
right?
that.
So, so they tap out. But if you have a strong purpose, what's the purpose? Health, vitality, longevity, and you know your outcome. This is where I want to be. Boom, 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 boom. Purpose pulls, right? So I think what's important in a relationship is first knowing what's the purpose. Because if you want to win, if that's the purpose to win, you're going to lose, right?
Mm,
Because love is other focused. So I know for me, and I don't know if my wife recognizes it, but sometimes when I'm with her, I'm conscious. I become conscious and present. And I'm asking the question, am I being transactional with her? Meaning I want something back from her. Or am I loving her right now? Am I seeing her? Now, this is where it
mm,
gets difficult because I want what I want, sure, but there's something bigger than this, right? And
mm,
that is, I mean, we can have a nice business. I can get what I want, but are you going to have a sustainable? Are you going to have a depth of a relationship? You got to know your outcome. What's the purpose? So I think the deeper issue is that is can you see the other person? Can you hold what they need at the same time hold what you need? Can you hold your recipe aside for a moment to be able to hear their recipe? Because at that point, then you're loving the other person. You're seeing each other,
mhm,
and maybe out of that we find that synergy. We find that answer.
mm.
You know.
That's
Yeah.
really
So
beautifully said because I love how earlier you talked about the need for love. And you said a lot of times we settle for connection, even
yes,
in marriage. But love has to do a lot with authenticity. So it's not the adoption or adaptation of their recipe or their needs to yours, but maybe it's just the open mindedness of accepting their recipe, of being aware of actually seeing them authentically for who they are in a relationship, recognizing that we're
yes,
all dynamic and shifting and changing, that we don't have to become the same, but that we can basically encourage and complement. Be inspired by, embrace each other's very authentic version of what their values are.
So let me ask this. So put you guys on the spot. So Jeremiah, it would be like, can you remember the last time you saw the little girl in her come out?
A good question. Yeah, I think not that long ago. I think we had it's probably 1 or 2 weekends ago. We're playing with the kids, and
Yeah,
she was just showing up in a very um, engaged way. Like we're here to play. There was no distraction. There's no
yeah.
worry. There's no I got to get back to this text. I think she was showing up in that moment with our family. It's helped because there's other kids around, actual kids, right? But showing up in that place to say we're just here to play. We're not here with an agenda. We're not here. And I think in my mind we say little girl, her showing up with we're just here. We're here and we're having fun and we want to be in this moment together. I think that was a great moment. So I'd say probably 2 weekends ago was that.
And did that bring out the little boy in him?
That is like a good question.
Thanks.
Yes. Playfulness invites playfulness.
Yes.
And maybe that carefree, I think, is a lot of what I'm hearing him say, where it's like, let's kind of throw all the other weightiness of our daily life out the window for a second and be highly present in
Yes.
just right now. And that invites this sense of like playfulness and carefree. And so do I see that reflected when I bring that to the table? Absolutely. But yeah.
Yeah. So now we got the variety, right? Right.
Mm,
And more importantly, you see each other. And I think if you can bring that into conversations, even when they're weightier, and
mm,
you can communicate it, it's important that you see the person, that you see the little girl. Then she feels significant. She feels cherished. She feels loved. She begins to feel certain because you're holding what she's experiencing, and vice versa. He
mm,
feels respected. He feels certain that you're going to show up and be there and hear him and feels loved.
Yeah.
So I think there's there's levels, and I'm weary to just speak about the transactional level because there's something more important, because I mean, like we're talking about needs. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a very short, I don't even mean to be too philosophical, but we have a very short time here.
Right.
And
Right.
what we really want is very simple, right? What was it in
Mm-hmm.
Notting Hill, the movie, right? I'm just a girl, asking a boy to love her. I mean, it's just so simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Such a
now
good
we
line.
right, but now we complicate things with money, or I want this, or I want that. It's messy. Love is
Yeah.
messy.
Mm.
Mm.
Love is messy.
I really love
But
your
messy can be beautiful.
that's
It
right.
can be,
All right.
can be beautiful.
Yeah, I love your idea of, as you're talking about, of saying like, we both have needs, and people in a relationship have both needs, but almost having you said a purpose, a lot of times we'll call it a vision, a vision for their life bigger than just the two of them. Because there's moments, I think, as you talk to us, there's moments where we need our needs met, right? There's also moments where in the love aspect that we, lay down our need for the sake of someone else,
Mm.
and I think if it's
Sure.
perpetually one-sided, it's an unhealthy relationship, someone constantly ignoring their own needs. But there's some beauty to say, to serve this larger vision of what we want our home to look like, what we want our our life to be like, and whatever that vision may be for their
Mm-hmm.
future, to purposely live into your needs and see each other's needs. There's also seasons, I think, to set down some of your needs. And Laura, your question at the beginning is, an entrepreneur who's looking to grow. I could see them, purposely rolling off the throttle a little bit to give some certainty to their spouse. I could see the spouse, limiting their need for certainty and say, I don't have it all figured out. I would like more, but I'm going to go with it, because there's a
Mm-hmm.
bigger vision that we see that we're doing together. And I think there's some real beauty in that aspect, that our needs are not these hard and fast on and off, yes, no, but it
Mm-hmm.
seems like they're very a gradient scale. And there's seasons of when some are louder. I imagine as people
Yep.
approach retirement, that need for certainty gets a little louder.
Yep.
But I think there's a part of that is having a dynamic where you have a vision together. And that's what we love, is the planning
Yes.
side. We say, what is the vision? What is your financial vision? And I think, Max, on your side is also what's your interpersonal vision? What's it going to feel like when you're
Mm-hmm.
60? What's it going to feel like when you're at a certain
I
level?
think you teed this up well because I can't help but kind of progress the conversation to this other group that we work quite often with, which are those who are maybe peering over the edge, looking into retirement or planning to step into retirement or have recently stepped into retirement. And that's
Why do you make it sound like an abyss?
Yeah, exactly, right?
right.
And I think people see
Because
it like that at times, right? They don't want to
yeah,
work, or it
it
just feels like
seems
this black
vague.
box. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and to some, it's crystal clear, right? They know exactly what they want. And even the word retirement, um, another word, we talked about a lot of words when we prepared for this, Max, but we talked about wealth. Like what is real wealth? We talked about financial freedom. A lot of people tie these words with retirement. When they can retire, they have sort of arrived. They
Yes.
expect
Yes.
themselves to have arrived. Maybe they define financial freedom as no more debt, or I don't have to work for a paycheck anymore. I can now go on to do that thing I've always wanted to do. Um, and I think there's a real invitation there, which is that going back to what you use that term seasons, right? Retirement is a season of life, but it doesn't mean that your purpose or your values have totally shifted. Um, they might be interpreted differently, they might be applied differently, but that financial freedom and wealth can actually have lots of different definitions throughout the various seasons of our life. Um, so
Well,
I,
you're
yeah.
speaking on a couple different things, one is, you know, one of the traps the mind has is there's only one place to have joy. There's a pattern. And that is, so the mind has 60,000 thoughts a day. And there's 60,000 of the same crappy thoughts we had yesterday, right? But patterns, right? I mean, they are 60, that's what they estimate. And but there's patterns. So the mind either focuses on what I'm grateful for, or it focuses on lack or loss or not enough.
Mm.
It focuses on what I have control of, or it focuses on what I don't have control of. The mind is either in the past, the present, or the future. So I'm going to give you just a couple quick patterns. So if you're focused on lack and loss, what you don't have control of in the past, that person experiences depression, anger, resentment. If you focus on lack or loss or not enough, that I'm not enough, I'm not going to have enough, I don't have control of it in the future, that's an anxiety pattern, fear, right? The only place to have joy at any season in life is to focus on what am I grateful for?
Mm.
What do I have control of? And being present to live a life. And this is why I get up at 4:03 in the morning to create presence. I go outside, I look at the stars and I look at the space to create presence. Because my mind's going to come in telling me I'm not enough, I don't have enough hair, all that I'm not, lack, what I don't have control of. So the idea is to be present. Because the idea, the illusion that, one day when I'm retired, I'll have enough and then I can relax. The illusion that, that I'm doing this today. And it goes back to the entrepreneur. I'm gonna, I can sacrifice maybe family, although I value family, to get rewards later. There, if you have that mindset now where it's not enough, you're lacking, you're going to have it in retirement. Sometimes it's important to see the abundance that's in front of you.
Mm.
That's the lesson that I'm learning is abundance is a deeper thing. It's not a horizontal, it's a vertical. Abundance is everywhere. When I go out at 4:03 in the morning, I look up at the stars and it's a miracle. It's all a miracle. So I get reminded of that miracle every day. And then I go on my day and I deal with the horizontal, that meaning what I have to deal with, right? But life is like the Titanic, rearranging furniture on the Titanic. It's all gonna go down. So we've got to deal with the vertical,
Yeah.
the kind of more of kind of a spiritual, it's like what we value, what's really important. We've got to balance it. So then we move into retirement, and those that have said, salvation is in the future, not now, they're going to be depressed. I was meeting with a firefighter recently. I didn't know him, but he was telling me his story. He had just retired, and I could tell he wasn't meeting his needs. Because when he's with the guys, he felt like he belonged, he felt loved, he felt significant, he felt certain, being a fireman, he had variety, right? And he had all of that.
Mhm.
And he's just kind of sitting over there like a bump on a log. And, I'm talking with him. And so I go over the 6 human needs, and it's like something woke up in him. Contribution. Well, there's ways to contribute now. How are you going to do that? Have you thought about that? Right? How are you going to get variety? Yeah, you got certainty, but now you're bored. What are you going to do? Where are you going to get your significance? Right. So in those seasons, back to work, I think that for entrepreneurs in seeing what the family needs, for me, when we were building the businesses, we have a couple of companies. In the beginning, my wife stayed home, and the agreement was that I was going to work 2 nights. And other than those 2 nights, I didn't work. Somehow we made it work. Now I'm in a season of my life, although I'm 27 years old, I've said that many times, that I have a lot of time. I can do a lot of things. But for that season, that was important to be there to pick up the kids from dance. It was important to go to those events. I don't regret any of them. If it's kind of like we call future pacing. Go to the future, look back. Would you have regrets? See, there's 2 kinds of, life gives us pain just in general. We're all going to experience pain. But the worst kind of pain is the pain of regret.
Mm.
And when I talk with business owners, it's all about just finding that balance, meeting your needs, meeting the needs, so you don't have regret. That's the worst, you know.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But it sounds like too,
So
there's
I
a,
don't know if I answered your questions.
yeah, no,
Oh,
I
so
think it
great.
is.
And more.
Yeah, I think there's a part of you, as you're saying, with the season of, some of these really being meaningful, but having to fulfill, in essence, all the needs in different seasons in different ways. And the example you gave about the, person who recently retired from the fire department, for them needing to fulfill these needs in different ways. And I imagine, I mean, people use the word legacy. They don't have these you don't have it listed here, but contribution and significance. I can see those together coming in a concept of, what I've done, has it mattered? And I think there's a part where people get to retirement that some of their needs for, do I matter? Have I mattered? Do I still matter? Even though
Yes.
the way the recipe they've had instantly changed, right? They're no longer going to work. They're no longer being affirmed by their colleagues. They're no longer being looked to for advice in the same way in a professional role. But then for them to lean in to something that is, fulfilling those needs, but perhaps in ways they never were able to. I think you gave a great example of having time now. Man, there's so many people who said, if I just had, an extra 4 hours every day, I could get all the things done. Well, there comes a point in their life where they probably will, right? Their future self, now that they're no longer working, they have more time. So to almost purposely earmark some of those tasks, activities, or ways to fulfill some of these needs as being future. You said with young kids, that's a now issue, right? You can't push that out. You can't delay.
That's
They're
right.
only going to be young now. So you have to prioritize that. Whereas there might be some other elements that can be pushed off. Hey, if I want to work 3 or 4 nights in the evenings, I might do that later on my volunteer job that I have when I'm 64, because that's going to be a lot of fun to be, really pushing into something new that is different than when you had young kids. It was important to pick them up from dance. It was important to do those. I think that's a great element of retooling. And for us, a lot of times we talk with people when they talk about retirement, and not that retiring from something, but retiring to something. Trying to have that
Mhm.
mindset to say, what are you going to walk into that is your new, I mean, for men especially, identity. It's
Yes.
how you find your significance. And I think what I really like, what I hear you saying, is not that these needs are bad and we need to get over them. We need to get past them. We need to pretend they don't exist, which I think might be my natural, oh, I don't need this. I'm okay by myself. But to acknowledge, I know I have needs, and they used to be met in this season in this way. As I'm entering a new season, how can I adequately fulfill my, these needs? How can I make space for those? And in a way that's really going to line up with my values. In fact, maybe in more line up to my values than they ever have, because I'm more intentional now. And I think it's a great view of retirement, not as a absence of, but a really leaning into, a new season and a new recipe.
Yeah.
Well, the
We
good book. If I
mm,
could, I was reminded that the good book says, without a vision, the people perish,
Yeah.
mm,
right? And we don't want that abyss. We don't want them to move into an abyss.
yeah. Max, you are a wealth of insight. And I think oftentimes Jeremiah and I will communicate with our clients that we are therapist or coaching adjacent, which means that there is a beauty to the work that you do as a coach and as a therapist. And it really aligns with this process of building a plan. Now we look at it from the financial perspective, but I love the illustration of the horizontal and the vertical, because the horizontal is the life tilt, and you can only set up that patio furniture so many times because eventually we all know where we're headed. My dad uses the illustration of, your life is kind of like manure. If you just let it sit, it starts to stink. But if you spread it around, it can help things grow, and the money and the wealth that we have in life, going back to the exchange of value, is not just what value we're seeking personally, but what value we can offer to others from a contributory perspective. And so I'm sad that I have to wrap up our time for today, because there's just so much insight that you offer, Max. So we're going to have to do this again. For our listeners who might be interested in in finding your services, coaching, therapy, what would be the best way that they could find you?
They could look New Hope Christian Counseling Just look up the website, just put in New Hope Christian Counseling. I have an office in Moreno Valley and Murrieta.
Okay.
But I do Zoom. So I see people all over the
Great.
world. So
Great. I love it. We'll include the link in the show
Thank you.
notes. And of course, for our listeners who are ready to build a financial plan, maybe they don't even know exactly what they need. Jeremiah and I and Dad, Randy, would love to sit down with you anytime, so they can reach us at tricordadvisors.com. So thank you again so much for your time, Max. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
We have a few more things to let you know about before we go. Podcast reviews really help us to serve more people and get this information into the hands of the people who need it. Please leave us a review. Even if it's not 5 stars, we welcome the feedback.
And we invite you to let us know what topics you would like to hear more about, or what would benefit the people in your life who you're closest to. We have more resources online. Those resources are designed to help you share this great information easily with people in your life. To access those resources, please visit tricordadvisors.com.
Often we hear from clients that they wish they had talked to us sooner. If that's you, we'd be thrilled to see how financial planning can benefit your life. Email us at contact@tricordadvisors.com or simply click on the link in the show notes.
This show was produced by Graham Gardner at Model FA. Find out more about how to create a podcast for your financial planning business by visiting modelfa.com. We love creating content that's useful, resourceful, and maybe even a little entertaining. We want to make this mega universe of financial topics and advice applicable and helpful to your life.
Remember, at Tricord Advisors, we are your future's best ally.